welcome to Nation. You're joining me, Elane, Noor, Abdullah. Now, debates surrounding the legality of medical cannabis in Malaysia re-emerged recently. According to Deputy Health Minister, Dr. Noor Azmi Ghazali, clinical studies on cannabis for medical use in Malaysia are still at its preliminary stage. We're still behind nations that have implemented cannabis for the treatment of chronic diseases around the world. Meanwhile, earlier in April this year, the Health Minister, Khairi Jamaluddin, stated that the ministry is ready to collaborate with academia and industry players towards research of medical use of cannabis. Now, there have been many discussions and advocacy for the use of medical cannabis. However, there's yet to be any proposals for a clinical study or trial for its use. Hello and welcome. On today's episode, we'll be taking a look into the perspectives surrounding the use of medical cannabis. I'm joined by Dr. Janethy, BALAKRISHNAN, BOKSTROM, President, Association of Integrative Medicine Malaysia, AIMM, and JOHAN MOHAMAD, President, Malaysia Hemptech Industrial Research Association, MHIRA. Hello, welcome, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure to have the both of you in the studio to speak about this topic, of course, a slightly controversial topic, especially for our show. But let's start with the very first question. What is the difference between medical cannabis as well as industrial hemp? Perhaps, Johan, you can take this question for us.
Right. Okay, thank you, Elane. Medical cannabis and industrial hemp, of course, the plant has three main species.
Right.
From sativa, indica, and ruderalis. You can see the difference from the plant or even the physical of the leaves.
Right.
Okay, and what differ is, of course, the level of THC. Okay. Medical cannabis is a prescribed medicine, where industrial hemp, or there's also some what you call products from the plant that is non-psychoactive. So whether it's a psychoactive or non-psychoactive differs the use, and medical cannabis is always, we are referring to the higher THC with prescription, and about our discussion today.
So essentially the plant is the same plant. Because I think we're familiar with hemp products. A lot of it is used, I think doctors talking about fibers, we've seen it in materials, we've seen it as bags, we've seen it as, I can see some of the products here. Perhaps you can explain to us a little bit with regards to some of the things that are on display here today as well.
Okay.
Let's start with this lovely leaf.
Okay, this is our project called Advanced Material Industry.
Advanced Material,
Advanced Material Industry, we're focusing on lightweight material. And it has to be anti-fire, strength, and we find this leaf is actually to show that this block is made of wood coming from the stalk of the plant. And
this is the leaf of the hemp.
Correct.
The hemp plant.
Yeah. So for education purposes, of course, if you don't put it on your wall, but for education purposes, we have this here, and this we actually bought it from Thailand, and they actually shipped it here. So and of course we have others such as this bioplastic, and this is the fabric that we produce here in Malaysia from the raw material that is coming from Nepal. So this is basically what we want is to extend the knowledge of hemp to be the solution of the material for our future.
Right, so there's a lot of resource that can be used from the hemp plant itself. But as you mentioned, the difference between medical cannabis as well as the plant that's producing all this material is the psychoactive agent or the psychoactive properties of the plant itself. So perhaps I'll go to the next question. What are among the benefits of medical cannabis and the misconceptions surrounding its use? This would be directed at you, Dr. Janethy.
All right. Actually, we are witnessing a fantastic revival and rediscovery in medicine. Because if you look at the history of the pharmacology of the medical cannabis, it dates back to 7,500 years ago in China, Egypt, and in India. So we're just revisiting, actually. So the medical benefits that's well documented is that it reduces inflammation, so it's very good for acute and chronic pain.
Right.
It also, it was tested for to control nausea and vomiting for patients who took chemotherapy.
Oh, Wow.
Then it was also used in this autoimmune disease called multiple sclerosis.
Yes.
So it reduces the spasms.
Right.
And then it was also increases the appetite for patients who are cancer patients and AIDS patients. So they have products. These are very well controlled studies that has been done. And today there's a lot of papers on actually it's used to reduce drug dependency on opioids, prescription drugs on opioids. And it's also for insomnia, for anxiety, for depression, for post-traumatic stress disorders, epilepsy. There's a whole list of it.
But then the question is, there's a lot of resistance because of the misconceptions. What are some of these misconceptions, Doc?
Yeah, because in general, cannabis, it has been highly exploited and abused.
Yes.
So many people, when they think of it, they think of a high drug dependency, where it causes psychosis, paranoia, confusion, and it's also lumped together with the other dangerous substance like heroin and amphetamines.
That's right.
Right. So, and these are all under Schedule 1, these narcotics. But the thing is that there has not been a single record of death from the overdose of cannabis.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. So,
So where does that history come from in terms of that perception?
It's just that lack of education.
Right.
It's lack of education. So like most doctors, I took about 10 years traveling around the world because I myself thought there was a stigmatization around it.
Yeah.
So, but after research and a lot of education, I can say, as of today, it is a safe herb.
And it's been used around the world. More than 40 countries have legalized its usage
About
as
50
well.
over, yeah?
Now 50 over. And perhaps the next question would be, what are the regulatory challenges in allowing the medical use of cannabis and cannabinoids? Perhaps both of you can take this question. We'll start with you, John.
Okay. The regulation-wise, I think first of all, our current cannabis law is still looking at the 1952 Act, which recently last year our Ministry of Health did mention about we are allowing the medical access. But I just came back from Bangkok. What I observed that over there they are focusing on wealth, not focusing on the drugs industry. I think this is very important for us to understand cannabis as a whole. So the regulation can actually define into whether it's a psychoactive cannabis or whether it's a controlled prescribed medical cannabis I mentioned earlier. So the regulation is, since it's still on 1952, we actually need to look at what are the needs of the people. Globally, we are experiencing this COVID and pandemic. This is where we need to boost the immune system. And when we are talking about medical cannabis access, it is not necessarily referring to the drugs. Okay, so that will be my answer in terms of the regulation. I think the direction of Malaysia as a country, should the country would recommend or introduce the medical cannabis access, we need to have a better understanding whether we are promoting the wellness or are we promoting the drugs industry.
Dr. Janethy, what's your take on this?
I think the challenges lies in actually, when I had an international conference, I actually asked the Pharmacy Services Program Director to talk about this. Because a lot of times, it's just not only on Ministry of Health, because it's interdisciplinary. You have Home Affairs, you have Agriculture, and all those. So I think the government is really, we are hoping as NGOs that they will work something. The first thing we would urge the government is to make sure there's accessibility. Once, they've decriminalized, and then after that, they're going to legalize. Because like what Johan just said, he came back from Thailand, and the market for wellness and well-being is bigger than for sickness.
Right.
So where is this people who need it for wellness, and where are they going to go? And so the challenge is, like in Australia and UK, the black market shoots up because
confusion.
And the accessibility. So that is my main concern. I hope we urged the government to make sure that people who need it will have access to it.
So essentially, the key question here, what's the roadmap, right, towards creating this accessibility?
Yes.
So the first roadmap that I think one of the things that we need to be able to establish is to decriminalize the use of, and perhaps, you know, there's other things along the way. First, the decriminalization before even talking about legalization of the usage of it. And what does that mean? Does it mean there's now accessibility for importation, or does it mean there's accessibility for the locals to be able to make that as part of a wealth creation program, for us to be able to grow this and make this available as part of our wealth creation, whether it's for export or whether it's for internal distribution as well. There looks like there's a program that needs to be created in terms of a blueprint. So perhaps there needs to be a sort of like a team that's coming together to be able to discuss and see where we're going with this, because it's just been mooted recently and everybody's talking about it. So there's a lot of confusion out there with regards to where does this go. Does it mean that I can start by putting a plant in my home and then self-medicate? So that's sort of like all those things that, you know, you start questioning with regards to what decriminalization and legalization actually spell out for the individual person, when, like you said, you know, it's for the ability to treat inflammation, treat nausea, treat sort of like chronic pain, and making it as a sort of a medical cannabis, which allows people to be able to access. This would be an alternative to drugs that they are heavily dependent on. So
basically, the thing is that now when the MOH, pharmacy services, actually they have a program where they do have it for under compassion. That means if a patient who is terminal, who's dying and doesn't have nothing else work, then you can write to the government and ask, but that's a bit tedious because it's a lot of red tape there. So they do have is by a patient name basis. They do have that. So, but I think some of them have tried. I've tried for one patient, and the oncologist said it was quite difficult. So,
but you're saying that this should be accessible to anyone who
whatever
is looking for pain relief.
Pain relief, yes, and also, like he says, wellness, because there's a lot of anxiety and depression today, mental health.
Which this can also be.
Definitely, yes, because it does reduce anxiety. Yes.
So we're looking forward to this. So the next question is, what is the evidence base for the medical use of cannabis and cannabinoids? And what do we mean by the medical use of cannabis and cannabinoids? Perhaps we'll start with you, Doc.
Yes. Evidence based, you know, as of today, there's already 11,000 published papers on medical cannabis, the benefits of medical cannabis. It's fantastic. This is in the National Library. I got this article today from US. And as we speak, you know, it is rapidly evolving. There's going to be more and more papers on that. So on evidence based is that where the pharmaceutical companies have to do controlled clinical trials. These are very expensive exercise, but it has been done since 1980s. We already have synthetic THC oral capsules called Nebulon and Marinol. It's already been done. And then we have Sativex, which is a spray, and that is equivalent of THC to CBD. That is for spasticity multiple sclerosis patient. And we already, in 2018, we have Epidiolex. I think it's 2016 or 2018, Epidiolex for epilepsy. So drug companies have started since the 1980s. So talking about evidence-based is already there. Yes.
And on your part, John, what's your take on this?
The experience on COVID has actually involved many researchers, including a university in Colorado. They have started a study, and they have came across that a non-psychoactive part from the cannabis sativa, which refers as hemp, can help COVID. And that was about 3 months ago. And last month in the UK, the government is looking into 100,000 of the members of public to allow them for this access, again the non-psychoactive part, to see whether it works to reset the human body. So this will be, I would say, my the recent development on
So that's interesting. So
Yeah.
some trials going on with
Yeah.
regards to testing on the efficacy of the use of some of the hemp sort of byproducts,
Yep.
which
Yep.
includes the non-psychoactive versions.
Correct.
But we're talking about both. I think most of the debate is with regards to medical cannabis, which has more of a psychoactive agent in it. Is that
Yeah.
correct?
Yes, like the synthetic THC, it's just THC. That is Nabilon and Dorinol, but that's by the drug companies.
So will that be what we're looking at, being able to bring those alternative, or what do you call them? Are they drugs?
But those are the mainstream drugs.
Right.
But now we're looking at, like your next question I see is that cannabis preparations. That's the one we're looking at, the natural products.
Right, yes. So
Yeah.
let's talk about that. What is the difference between cannabis preparations and medicinal products, and why is this important? How do we differentiate it?
So medicinal products was what I spoke about the drug companies. That those are controlled clinical trials, a very expensive exercise. Now, cannabis preparation is anything from the cannabis sativa plant. So we look into the most prized is of course the flowering tops, the buds. Okay, then you have the oil extractions, and you have this. But the plants today we have many strains because of hybrids.
Yes.
And also the very sophisticated way of cultivation,
Yeah.
this new engineering coming in,
Right.
and also the way you store
Yeah.
this raw products.
Right.
Okay, so in that way, every finished product has a different strength.
Right.
It's because the composition varies, but we also have spectrometries and chromatographies. We have expensive machines to also know what's exactly the finished products. And these are cannabis preparations. They don't have, so because they have very different compositions, so you can't go for clinical trials. So what we do is that these are preparations, okay? But this is fine because like we have dispensaries that can do it, like overseas, and that can be actually tailored. I would say it's dosage and titration or customized for the individual, and that's fantastic.
But that begets the question of how do you decide then the standardization of what is effective and what is safe and where do you get it from? Certification,
Yes.
licensing, and
Yeah.
all that question then sort of pops up. So perhaps Johan, you can address that.
The first on the preparation, what I personally observed on our trip last week to Bangkok, they serve you on the daily breakfast, like
Right.
in the tea, and they are like concentrating all the non-psychoactive. It's
Right.
like they're not focusing on the drugs.
So it's promoting well-being.
Yeah, there's no prescription.
Right.
It's in your.
It's like herbal tea.
For example, this is a
Correct.
hand milk. It's available in Malaysia.
Yeah.
Yes,
in
I've seen hand milk, yes.
Of course, this is high protein with omega-3, 6, and 9 acid folic. You don't need to buy it separately. It's everything in there.
It's in there.
So that's why you need to understand the value of the nutritional product. So going to your question on the cannabis preparation, what I experienced in Thailand, I think they have been doing the right way into how they prepare it as part of the daily use. And the prescription side is where the doctors need to prescribe on the higher dose. That and in dosing, nowadays there's micro dosing.
Right.
So and earlier Dr. Janet was telling that there is no record on death on cannabis. So that stigma and taboo, I think, Elane, you need to also get rid of it, so that we hope that we can help the audience to remove that stigma.
So
Because-
essentially, it's kind of like saying that the hemp plant, which is essentially the source of the medical cannabis as well,
Yeah.
should be hailed
Yeah.
as sort of like a medicinal property that should be available to all, versus the stigmatization of the plant and its produce with regards to its psychoactive agents.
Yeah. Yeah,
the
that it's going to
THC.
cause sort
Yeah.
of the negative
Correct.
impact that I think
Yes.
people perceive,
Yes.
which, like you mentioned, has never been proven to create that kind of impact. So now I think the next question is the human endocannabinoid systems and its deficiencies related to health. What is this, Doc? This is like a bit of a mouthful at this point of time.
All right. The endocannabinoid system has just been discovered in 1964 by Dr. Ralph McCullum in Israel. Okay. what's the endocannabinoid system is another biology system. You know, you have your cardiovascular system, your central nervous system, your immune system. So this is just another system that we are learning. We have been learning, and this is to actually regulate all bodily functions to homeostasis,
Right.
to balance things out. All right. So then in 1990, they discovered the CB1 and CB2 receptors. Okay, and the CB1 receptors is found actually in your brain and your enteric nervous system, that means your gut. And then he found that this receptors is important because it can modulate pain.
Ah, okay.
That's why, like you say, the benefits of medical cannabis is to control pain.
Exactly. And I think that's the sort of like the biggest differentiator when it comes to humans. We function on either, you know, the avoidance of pain or the seeking of pleasure. And hence,
it has to be in balance.
That's such a huge component with regards to, you know, finding that homeostasis, as you mentioned.
Correct.
Now, before we run out of time, I want to cover a few other questions. The differentiation, industries, and economic for hemp and climate impact. Perhaps you could briefly cover on this, John.
Okay. Of course, traditionally in this region, this plant has been. I'm referring to hemp, industrial hemp. Is already helping the circular economy. It's like either they trade leaves, like in Thailand, they're selling from 1,200 ringgit per kilo of the leaf.
Wow.
So it's a big economy for the rural area, especially, you see. And we are talking about a non-psychoactive plant again.
Correct.
And when it comes to climate, of course, if this wood would be built, we built a house out of this wood, it absorbs carbon dioxide. And 1 acre of hemp plant already sequence the whole, and they actually rejuvenate the soil.
Right.
So it works both economically and for climate intention.
It sounds like the perfect sort of solution for us to move towards, as we are moving towards carbon zero, carbon neutral by 2050. I mean, that's sort of like part of the SDG goals for a lot of the countries.
Yes.
And this is one way for us to do that.
Yeah, ESG.
The ESG goals, and in order for us to be able to reduce our consumption and impact on the environment as well. Now, perhaps let's talk about how are we assisting the government with information for them to make a better decision to legalize medical cannabis in this country. So this is the important question. What is needed in order for us to be able to be on that path to make medical cannabis available and accessible? Doc.
Okay. I believe in education. So what we are doing now since
what's most important with regards to education? What's the information that needs to be out there?
What type of education?
Yeah.
I think to all stakeholders, actually, basically not only to the medical practitioners. Because if the consumers, let's say the end consumer, understand how good it is, and also we have to be careful because there is the psychoactive element, the THC, that's the one that has been abused. And if they could control that part, then let the education go on how to do it, because it's a lifelong learning journey. Even all of us doctors in our undergraduates and postgraduates, we didn't study this.
Right.
Now we have to study this. We need to study botanical taxonomy. We need to know the plant, like how Johan says, because if you don't understand the plant, you don't understand how is this going to be. And I feel that what Johan and I are doing has an NGO. We want to make Malaysia the education hub for medical cannabis and industrial hemp for ASEAN. And we're already starting that in October because we can't have, like in Thailand, try the products. We can't do it here. But we could do the education, and that is how we want to assist. And
Let's talk about, I think there's a lot of sort of talk out there about misuse or abuse. Perhaps you can address that concern.
Right. I think the media also played its role in terms of those words related to addicts. You know, because we know that cannabis has a proven record, has a cured opiate. Dr. Janet mentioned that earlier, and it's been research has been in everywhere.
Right.
And under the association, we have categorized our division into industrial hemp, like those products, and nutritional food, and we have medical hemp.
Right.
So we don't have medical cannabis. Medical cannabis we'll be working with Dr. Janet, because medical hemp is for us to spread the correct message to the government and of course to our members that we are not promoting drugs. We are promoting the health and the wellness side of this medical cannabis. And on another end, we are working with the stakeholders, including Dr. Janet and a few government agencies, to understand where is the loophole that we can spread in terms of the right message, and we are ready to help other agencies to educate into the right term and the right use of this.
Thank you so much. In closing, Dr. Janethy, perhaps you can let us know, there's just one final question. The countries that have successfully implemented this, what can we learn from them?
I think what we can learn, that's a good question, because I've been to Australia now, in UK, this is accessibility. They have legalized, and so many patients, I'm not even talking about wellness, even patients who need it, they can't get access to it.
Right.
And this is something we got to look at the outset.
Right. So accessibility is the key point here.
Yes.
Making it accessible, making this as an alternative so that we have alternative solutions to just being drug dependent on those that we have been before. Thank you so much, both Dr. Janethy as well as Johan, for sharing your thoughts with us today. We look forward to the progress and evolving of this topic, and hopefully patients will be able to have access to these products soon enough.
Right.
We were in conversation with Dr. Janethy Balakrishnan, BOKSTROM, President, Association of Integrative Medicine Malaysia, AIMM, as well as Johan MOHAMAD, President, Malaysia Hemptech Industrial Research Association, MHIRA, and we were discussing the topic of medical cannabis in Malaysia. And that's all for The Nation today. I'm Elane. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.